Okay, it's 10 o'clock. It's time for another Fireside Chat with the Xperts. We have a very special guest with us today, Mr. Phil Zarrow. Welcome.
Thank you.
Phil is with ITM Consulting. Both Bill and I have known him for, I guess I've known of Phil for a long time. We first met, you were doing a training, best practices training in Orange County. So I was fortunate enough to be sent to go to that and learn quite a bit. So
I thought you were going to say it was a cure for your insomnia or something. So okay, very kind, Dave. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about ITM Consulting, what you do, where you've been, where you're going?
Okay. Well, I've been involved in electronic assembly for over 40 years. And part of my early career was with equipment manufacturers. I was a rep for a while. I was with equipment manufacturers, and I was that the equipment saga culminated with being product manager for Vitronics at the time. This is pre-Soltec, and did that. And then I went to work for a tier 2 at the time contract assembler up in Northern California called GSS Array. And we had 6 lines in San Jose, medium volume lines, and we had about 25 lines outside of Bangkok. And my job there, working under my the immortal late Rich Freiberger, my job was as director of technology development. And so it was basically an inside consultant thing. A lot of it is what I do now, starting with process audits. So in what I've been doing, and I was there for a few years, and then I left to start ITM Consulting with a partner, and I've gradually built it up. And we now have 5 other consultants on board as well. And we do everything from, probably one of the most predominant things is process troubleshooting. And what we call troubleshooting, we call it process failure analysis. And this is where somebody's having a problem, they need it mitigated. Now, bear in mind that they don't automatically pick up the phone and call a consultant. I know you guys don't. Basically, we have what we call the 4 levels of defect resolution. Level 1, ignore it. Maybe it'll go away. Okay, put electrical tape over the check engine light. Turn the volume up so you don't hear that braking noise in the back, suspension. Yep. Okay. Level 2, try to fix it yourself. Well, yeah, that's what we are. We're engineers. We're supposed to fix it ourselves. And, varying success. If that doesn't work, it used to be maybe call a consultant, but then it became see what you can do to get it done fixed for free. So the boss is hanging out there, hey, get that fixed. So, you ask the guy in the next cubicle, you look at old proceedings, you call the equipment manufacturers. After all, printer manufacturers is going to be a real expert on, zone separation in your oven or things like that. So finally, and of course the internet. Oh, thank God for the internet, because we all know everything on the internet is true.
I mean, I gotta tell you,
there's been some handy YouTubes when it came to, fixing my dishwasher and certain things on the car. But, we're kind of an esoteric industry. So it's probably not. But anyway, if you read it on the internet, the internet must be true, and, the bulletin boards and stuff like that. And then finally, when all else fails and, you've got, escapes to the field and people are ranting and raving and stuff like that, then you call a consultant and they want you to come in, figure it out real quick for cheap and get it done. And that's our lives. And I love it. I mean, it's always a challenge. It's always fun, and learn something new every day. And so a lot of what we do is that we go, problem mitigation, things like that. We do one of our hallmark things is process audits. We actually have 2 patents on our audit methodology. We do process validation, particularly for high rel and mission critical type products that are being built. We qualify contract assemblers, or we help you, the customer, keep tabs on them, and basically help. We love it when we get to help people set up a process. I like to think we're going to help you do it right. So, but that's it. It's varied, and occasionally we get to other things like get involved in solder paste evaluations with customers, which we love, and equipment valuation. So it's a variety of things, but we're having fun. Still having fun.
It reminds me of that story of the CEO that introduces a new CEO to the company, right? And at that first day, he gives the new CEO 3 manila envelopes sealed, right? And number 1, 2, 3, and he tells the guy, listen, first problem you have, open envelope number 1, and then number 2, number 3. So the first trouble the new CEO gets into, opens the first envelope and says, reorganize. So they go ahead and reorganize the company. It's fine. Next trouble they had, opens the second envelope. He says, blame the previous guy. Easy. Blame the previous guy, throws it away. Keep doing it. Then the next problem comes in, opens the third envelope. It says, write 3 letters.
All right.
So,
I love it.
I mean, everyone knows you in the industry, right? You are the de facto mensch when it comes to S&T debugging and figuring out what's going on. And I know that your first address is airport somewhere, right? And then
until COVID, yeah, it definitely was.
That's what I was going to ask you. I mean, because your customers really need you at the time, you can't be there, right? How did you deal with this year of confusion and stress, right? Because now several of these customers need to pump product, right, in unprecedented levels at a time people are not showing up because they're sick, because they need to be separated. How did you manage this incredible challenge we had last year until now, actually?
A good question, Bill, because it's definitely been challenging because so much of our work to be really effective has to be hands-on, digging into it. Even when we do like a process order or a process mitigation, we'll ask customers to send certain data, SPC data things ahead of time. And sometimes it's kind of spotty. So when you're on site, you can really dig in. Plus what you see, what people are really doing, a lot of times it's even different from the manager's perception. So it's been very difficult being hands off that way. We have had a couple customers where we've observed social spacing and wore our masks and all that, where we were able to go on site. But, it's obviously dropped off quite a bit. And where I live in Tennessee, it's been a little bit more lax. But, for example, my associate, Jim Hall, was reluctant when we could travel to somewhere. He didn't want to travel because he's in Massachusetts. He'd have to do a 14-day quarantine when he gets back. And that meant not being able to go to the Y and everything else. So, but I've traveled a little bit, and but it's been challenging, and of course it's been limiting. And we know there's a lot going on because certainly from you guys' perspective, the capital equipment has been doing really well. From everybody I've talked to. So I'm sure a lot of that's established lines, but there's probably a lot of greenfields as well. So it's been challenging. The other aspect is we do a lot of our work is workshops, and I guess I'm old school. I so much prefer doing it live. It's good to tell because even now as we're addressing you guys, webinars are in such are so two-dimensional. But for example, when you're doing it live, you can tell people are paying attention, getting my crappy jokes, kind of wondering. But here, we don't know. I mean, for all I know, you guys may be eating lunch, reading a book. God knows what you're looking on your the internet. So it's but it's so much better. It's so much more dynamic. So I really miss that, and I'm really looking forward to it. We were able to do some with the proper social spacing. I've got another one scheduled in a couple of weeks. And man, I'm looking forward to it. It's just, I mean, let's face it, we're social animals. I'm glad we have the technology we have today. Present tense here. So
and I don't think the technology. I think one of the problems we get in is when we think technology replaces the human interaction. Right? I think it's a complement. Right? Complements human interaction. It makes it. Conversations like this possible, but it does not replace the, face-to-face, the handshake, and, live streaming of horrible jokes you have, right? But, but those you do anyway, in online and in live.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you think we changed as an industry after COVID or during COVID? I mean, what the things you've seen, right? I mean, you've been around for a couple of years now doing this. Do you see some of these new practices sticking around after COVID, or are we gonna flip back to the way we were?
That's a really good question. I mean, how the words go? The old Doors song, "The future's uncertain, the past is close behind."
Exactly.
really difficult to do. I think a lot of people who are working from home, that type level have kind of gotten used to it and kind of gotten used to the autonomy. Those who are able to adjust. A lot of people can't work from home.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for the last 30 odd years, so that's the nature of the beast. So, and I got to tell you, one of the things I love about my job is the autonomy. But with regard to most of the people that we work with, assembly people are essential people. They've been coming in and working the lines, and in many cases, multiple shifts. There was product to be built; it had to be done. And a number of my customers, one in particular that I worked extensively with, was building mission critical level, class 3 medical equipment, ventilators. And these poor guys had to go from building about 350 units a year to about close to 2,000 or 3,000 a month. So now it's leveled off. But we had to find contract assemblers, we had to validate the processes. And but those guys, on the one hand, the companies I was able to go visit, and that was far and few. A lot of this had to be done remote, and doing validation remotely. It's a good thing we had some pretty good tools. We live in the age we live in, but it was really rough. But the ones I went on site, we did the social spacing and things like that, and you get used to it. But so a lot of people listening to us today are nothing really changed. I still had to go in, I got high hopes, whatever the new normal is going to be, that, we can all deal with it. So, that's more powerful. Yeah.
Well, one thing we can rely on, right? People are incredibly adaptive and flexible, and we'll find a way, right? And in our company, we had people coming into the office every day, throughout the pandemic, and I'm incredibly thankful, for them, wearing masks every day. It's not easy. It's a pain. Nobody likes wearing a mask, right? I mean, I like, because I don't like to show my face in public, but I don't like scaring kids like I do everything.
It's paid for radio here, man. So I relate.
But it's it's with a lot of gratitude that I say that, right?
Yeah.
Now, one of the I think we've been spoiled, right, over the past 2 decades with a supply chain that are almost just in time, right? Do you think? And now there's been a massive disruption, right? There's starting with the beginning of the recovery last year, after summer in Q3, and that shockwave has been just falling. Now we're feeling everywhere, right? Do you think companies will review or re-engineer the way they see the supply chain, or we're just going to go back to this just in time, the good old Toyota days?
Yeah. I would have to guess it's going to be a combination of both, Bill.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be specific to the industry, the application, what they're building, things along the line. So I think we'll see a combination of it. But as far as rethinking, of course, we've seen more of a surge towards call it on-sourcing, whatever you want to call it, but more localized builds. But by the same token, there's still, obviously a lot going on that isn't remote to the different locales that we're all located in today. It's been interesting that way. Of course, you see some stuff that it just shows naivety. People say, well, let's, for now on, let's build our semiconductors and, our ICs and stuff in the United States, or build it here. Yeah, let's just, Samsung should build a foundry. Yeah, that's going to happen overnight.
Exactly. Honestly, who doesn't have a few $1 billion laying around, right, in their couch that you can just invest?
And all the expertise on hand that hasn't been doing anything else.
That's the other thing, right?
And it's not easy.
Yeah. And that's the other challenge. I mean, I can speak of certainly the United States, and I know of, a lot of the other areas in North America, possibly even Asia, is the generation of people and getting them trained and up to speed on the processes we have. And and of course, in times of budget restrictions or abnormality in the industry, of course, first thing to go is education. So yes, I'm tooting my horn because I like to do workshops, but the fact is that we have a new crop of people that are, inexperienced in this area. And, what are we going to do? I mean, one thing we get called on this is just over the years on process failure analysis. A lot of the calls we get is on wave and selective soldering. Lathe soldering's been around almost 70 years. And yet it's still not going away. I mean, we have selective soldering, which is good. There's always problems, things along those lines, and we still haven't rectified. Even with the better technology, one of the long-lasting problems we have is DFM. That's still one. I mean, I can give you statistics on how much printing contributes to the overall defects or reflow, but boy, when it comes down to DFM, is this big fog there. And even though the CAD programs have gotten better, it's amazing that there are still gaps and things along those lines.
Yeah. So what's DFM, Phil?
Design for manufacturability.
All right. So,
I know a lot of people want to use the F for something else, but it's designed for manufacturability.
So what, if you talk about DFM, right, when should a company think about DFM? Before or after designing and trying to manufacture a product?
Actually, before and designing it for manufacturability, but that isn't always the case. A lot of it is an afterthought. Oh shoot, I'm going to go back. So that's where the problem begins. And but again, with strides made in continuous improvement in feedback loops, in design, and trying to get design people a little bit more not savvy, certainly familiar with our world. That's the stride we want to make, but just being conscious of DFM. I always said, having been involved in quite a few design reviews, particularly when I worked for the contract assembler, a design review is a terrible time to find out you can't build that board. So it's got to be from the inception. And I've seen a lot of innovations. I've seen a lot of things with Lean Six Sigma, continuous improvement, a lot of innovation going towards detecting problems. In reactive, but even better proactive. And certainly you see it at your end in the X-ray world, but nothing replaces a good design. Getting it right in the first place as much as possible. Yeah,
so, we talk about design for X-ray inspection, right? Which is the similar concept,
right?
I mean, if you are right, you are, when you design a board, is the best time to make sure that capacitor is not perfectly aligned with the balls of your VGA. Just offset it by a little bit. So when you X-ray, you can actually look at the balls of the VGA and the capacitor on the side, right?
Yep.
It's not a complete overlap because, of course, we have a solution for that, right? We can do a tilted view or you can do 3D, but then the price grows exponentially and the speed decreases exponentially.
Exactly.
Right. So why not get it done when you're designing the board, right? I'm very interested. You have this range, right? You work with large companies, small companies, and so you have quite a bit of visibility, unique perspective in the industry.
Yes.
Why? The good old days where, the SMT line, that process was a bunch of machines, a bunch of boxes that, collected data and left inside these boxes, right? And now we've been talking about for a while now, Industry 4.0, connectivity of equipment. And I was wondering if you share the feeling that I get sometimes that we're expecting connectivity to replace this feeling that you need that understanding of the process, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost using data as a crutch to replace the experience that you have to have. Otherwise, the data is going to take you to very dangerous places if you don't understand the data.
Right. Mm. Yeah. I guess it's a multifold question, Bill, because as you said, the data capturing capabilities of so much of the equipment these days, a lot of it's been there for a while, but it's gotten so sophisticated. And yet one of the biggest problems we see is people not using the data. Or not using it properly, as you mentioned, or they have the equipment and they're not using the equipment properly. I can, I wish I could count, tell you how many lines we've audited, both here and in Asia, to an extent where we see a nice automated line, high-speed line, and they've integrated SPI, which we're big fans of, solder paste inspection. And they have the inline, they have the expensive, Ko-Young or the Parmy in there. Mm-hmm. And as we get closer to it, we see every board passing. Then we look at it and we see the parameters are basically the default values that were set for it. The problem was whoever was trained on this machine has either, gone to another position, left the company, got hit by a bus, And so basically the thing becomes a $250,000 pass-through conveyor.
Yeah.
It's like, so we see that a lot, or what they're doing, or people that don't even look at the data. So is Industry 4.0 going to force that issue or do it? I don't know. One of the observations, one of the guys in my crew, Ron Lasky, like said, we've concurred that we don't think most of the industry is even at Industry 3.0 yet.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of innovation. But the concept of, for example, these things come and go. There is a concept that was experimented by NPM in DEC back about 25, 30 years ago. It was called, adaptive closed loop adaptive intelligence. And the idea here is, dig this, guys, your printer would be basically, you'd have a menu and the operator would put in, size of the board, finest component, largest component, yada, yada, print area, things like that, type paste I'm using. And then the machine would use its intelligent base to knowledge base to basically do the primary design of experiments, set the settings. It would then print a board and then pass it on to a 3D automated SPI inspection, analyze it, go back, critique what it did, and make the adjustments, all hands off.
Nice.
And they were really, and part of it was like, wow, printing hands off, autonomous printing. Wow, teaching a printer to do that must be like teaching a car how to drive.
Yeah.
5 years later, autonomous cars. So the technology was moving along very nicely that way. The problem was it was so expensive. Nobody was going to wait in line to pay $300,000 for a printer to do that. There are other concepts. The whole idea of the lights out factory. There was a program, I'm thinking it was like 30 years ago or so. It was called CCAPS. And it was initiated by the Navy. I don't know why, but the idea was the lights out factory. And everything would be totally automated, all lines. And the joke was that you'd have a man and a dog would be the only people in the factory. And the dog's job was to wake up the guy when it was time to eat his lunch. So I'm seeing strides in that direction. And again, I think one of the links that you're kind of relating to, Bill, is artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
So, can they learn what we're doing mentally? And I think there's a lot of potential there. But there's a lot of other fundamentals that I think, we got to take care of, like using the data that we already have.
Exactly. And that's where we can't emphasize enough the importance of education and the importance of a trained and competent workforce, right? I remember an interview with Tim Cook, with the CEO of Apple. And so, the reporters gave him a hard time because they make stuff in China, right? And he said, you know what? Even if we want to bring stuff to US, there's not people to run those factories, right?
Right.
If they want to have a conference for all the jig makers, right, to make those specialty jig for those, very precise, manufactured for cell phones. In US, you're going to fill up a hotel room. In China, you fill up a stadium, right, with people.
Yeah.
They can do that. So it's, I think, as people who've been in the industry for a while, we do have to keep emphasizing the need to get people trained and educated. Otherwise, you can't make stuff if you don't know what you're making. And just rely on a computer software to do that, I think is dangerous. If you don't have the underlying understanding of what's happening, right? To just look at a number and trust it, I think it can be very dangerous.
Well, the good thing is that you guys specifically too are acting on that. I worked with, really in deep with X-ray when I worked for the contract assembler. This is right about 1990, 1991. We had this big X-ray system. It was top down only, very 2D. We didn't have oblique angle viewing, let alone 3D or tomography. Yeah. And this thing cost $250,000, and you really had a learning curve on it. I mean, there was a lot of gray area besides black and white. And, I could do the fundamentals, but basically it took what I call a radiologist for circuit boards to really understand what you're seeing.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at, how the learning curve has been so truncated and improved, and yet the capabilities equipment has gone up, and price wise it's so much more feasible. You get so much bang for your buck, and it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So I think you guys are a great example of that, to be honest with you. So cool.
That's interesting. Now you touched on something that's dear to my heart, which is innovation, right? Mm-hmm. And Why do you think oftentimes we see smaller companies being able to innovate faster than large companies? Why is that the case, or that's not the case? What's your experience?
Yeah, I think that is a case. And it's funny because it's changed. Years ago, I think what it took, and I'm talking maybe decades ago, the resources of a big company had to do that. So we go back to like the 60s, the 70s, you had the big OEMs, IBM, Hewlett Packard, TI, look at it, Bell Labs. Oh my God, what the innovation. I love to throw things at it. When do you guys, rhetorical questions, kind of like, not so rhetorical. When do you think this concept was invented? Like the idea of the BGA, the collapsible ball concept. And I said, okay, 1965. What? Yeah. Wow. And who? IBM.
IBM. Yeah.
They were building. It was like I think it was a resistor array or something on their MST card. I don't even know why they were doing it. Surface mount didn't exist. But I always like to say, hey, if somebody asks you a question like that, just say IBM 1965. Or if that doesn't say, I meant Bell Labs, ATT. So we had these big OEMs with this incredible innovation. But I think that faded with a couple things. One was the move towards outsourcing, which we started to see in the 80s. And some of the bigger CEMs are somewhat innovative, but they're not really paid to be innovative. They're paid to be, the old mantra, build it cheaper, faster, quicker, less expensive. So there's less money for that. Also, I think what you have in the mid 80s, certainly in the United States, was the loyalty to the companies. Things changed. And I think that, that affected morale. For example, prior to that, if you worked for a big company like the aforementioned ones or any of those guys, you had a job for life. You had a job for life. And not only that, they paid your education and things like that. And in the mid 80s, that kind of changed. And you didn't. They were letting people go and things like that. And I think the employee attitude also changed, like do it to them before they do it to you. So you had a lot of mobility that way. So I think that was one of the other countries. And I think the other notwithstanding one is bureaucracy, what you can do. And some of that is probably, legal aspects too. So I think the agility of smaller companies to get it done, to do and to how can I say, respect their workers as well. The employees say, wow, that was a good idea for it, kind of thing. So I think that's a lot of it. And I think that's why we're seeing it. So I totally agree with your observation, Bill. Yeah.
Yeah. Now hearing you talk, it reminds me, at night I read Aesop fables to the kids. I'm sure you guys do the same for your kids or, the Aesop fables. And there's one Aesop fable that came to my mind now as you're talking is I think they call the Hound and the Hare. And it's about this dog, right, that goes in pursuit of this hare, and the bunny runs away. And there's a fox that, makes fun of the dog. Look at this, it's much faster than you are. And then the dog says, what you don't realize is that I'm running for my lunch. He's running for his life. Right? So as we're innovating for our lives. The big companies are innovating for lunch, right? And I think that's what the shift related to innovate or die, right? And that can't be more true than what it is today, where like you were saying, right, the barrier of entry for data, for information is very low, right? Internet it has socialized access to that information, and your ability to process that data and innovate on it became the major differentiator, right? That sets you apart from everybody else, right? And you don't need a huge budget for that, right? You don't need 500 executives with white shirts and black ties to vet that for you, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, it is after 10:30.
Oh, right. Boo!
I will give you this, Phil. This is the first time where I almost missed it.
Well,
one of my main jobs here is to end this on time. And
okay. Well, you're doing a good job, Dave. Thank you. Well, we appreciate it.
I almost missed it this time.
Well, Phil was one of my mentors.
So, Phil, really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Good to have you on.
Hopefully to be continued. I look forward to our next one.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on again.
And thanks so much for everybody who tuned in. We appreciate it a lot. So thank you. And thanks for facilitating this.
I'll talk to you later.
Great.
All right, talk to you guys
Thank
later.
you guys. Bye all.